Okay, now I'm on the left side of the tractor as you sit on the seat. I actually put the wrong mark on here, but I like to put an L on the axle for left axle and find a little spot up here where we can put a little L. The reason being, and look, I don't know if it makes a lot of difference, it's just something I prefer to do, is mark the axles left and right, and I like to put them back in the same side. And I figure if it's been used to, you know, flexing this way a little bit, you know, and axles will flex, even though they're this round, they will flex a little bit. And then all of a sudden you flex them the other way, it might help them brake. But look, I don't know if that's the case or not, it's just something I've chose to do. So if I move the camera around here, on my great little trolley I'm on, and adjust it up a little bit, you can see next door there's the 135 multi-power. There'll be a few things happen with that as we go along, but I'll try and get this backing plate in the centre. And to pull the axle out, all we have to do is undo these 12 bolts. And often if you're doing the brakes, well, this can all come out in one hit. But if you don't want to do the brakes, you just want to do your axle seals, well, you can do that. And all I do in those instances is have a punch ready or something like that. And when we slide the axle out, I just slide a punch through to actually hold the brake backing plate in. Now you'll find with the brakes, I normally don't undo any adjustments like this centralisers and things like that here. They're probably set up well from the factory, and unless they've been fiddled with, there's no real need, and I find we can actually get really good brakes. Some people reckon Fergies don't have good brakes, but I can get them on my tractors. I can get them to pull up, lock up whenever they need to. I'll keep undoing this. We might come back in a minute or two, I'd say. Just a little bit of a note here. You'll notice this one come out with the stud. The stud came out of the housing. What I do then, I hold this in the vise, I undo the nut, and I make sure that these all end up in the bearing housing before we come back in again. And usually I clean them up and Loctite them in so it doesn't happen again. So just if you make sure that's right home in the housing, well, when you're finished, all these studs will be the same length and the same end sticking out and all that sort of thing. So this 135, it was going to be my tractor. I bought it and I thought, wow, that'll be a good little thing, 3-cylinder diesel, tractor, I'll do it right up and away we go. But then one of my customers come and saw me and said, oh, you're not interested in buying some more tractors? I said, oh, not really, I've got what I want. I said, what do you got? And he said, oh, I've got a 135 multi-power. I said, oh, have you now? So look, the normal 135 will do about 25 kilometres an hour, depending on what size tyres you have. The 135 multi-power with the standard 11.228s in the book, it says they're good for 36 kilometres an hour. So as a tractor, if you're travelling home on your own from a run, you can crack her open flat out and away you go. Whilst you're on the tractor trek, and I find the tractor treks I go on, most groups of tractors travel at around 19-20 kilometres an hour in there somewhere. And so while you're poking along with the crew, you just idle back and take it easy. You're not revving the arse off anything, and nothing to worry about there. So this nut's got a little bit of a burr on it there. Alright, I might switch off and come back. You don't really need to see me undo 12 bolts. Okay, you'll see I've got all these bolts undone now, and we can just a gentle little tap on the end here, and you don't have to tap them very much, and you'll open a small gap around this other side here. So if I bring you around there, you can see the gap starting in here. And there we go. Those brake shoes that were dry, I just put oil on them. Bloody hell. Okay, so if you didn't want to take the brakes at this stage, you can leave them on, and that's when you put a punch through the back here. So, but at the moment we don't worry about that. Actually, this bolt, this stud that we had here a little while ago, we could line everything up, and that's enough just to hold it in place while we pull the axle, if it doesn't fall out of the housing here. That bush has had it anyway. Okay, I think we'll just bring it all out in one hit. Okay, so sorry about that. There is the axle. Now we have a seal here. I'll try and bring him around and show you. There's a seal here. This is an old leather type. I'd say it's original. The old leather seal. There's a locking collar. See if I can get that sitting in there. Okay, there's a locking collar here, and look at this. That collar has been welded on at some stage. So there's no need to do that. That'll be interesting to get off. But yeah, they must have had it out, had trouble, and it's been welded on. There's a bit of wear around the axle where this seal goes, but we can put a new seal there. So anyway, that's something I haven't come across before. I actually heard people say about welding them on, but usually if you need to weld the collar on, you've got it too hot, or you've tried to press it on and it's expanded or something like that. So that's not very good practice. This is the rear brake plate, and where your brake rod goes up into the diff housing there should be a little bush in the housing, and that's what's left of mine. So there's a brass bush, and that works back and, well, that supports this shaft. So on the other tractor we had a little bit of wear here on one of the, I think it was a gold one, and so I ended up putting two bushes in there to support it all the way. So fair chance something like that will happen again. Right, you can see that I've actually pulled the left-hand trumpet housing off here, and by pulling the left-hand trumpet housing off, I wanted to show you something about pulling the axles. Now, look, all it was I didn't video taking the trumpet housings off. It was just a matter of undoing these bolts, and if you undo the left-hand bolt, you can actually take the diff out, and the diff comes this side. But the reason I did that was to show you up in here. Now, that there is the collar for the diff lock. Now, the diff lock pedal pushes that in, and when you push that in, I'll see if I can get you down here to down there. That's the side of your crown wheel carrier, and the teeth on that, they actually slide into here. And if we can get you back there to where we were again. Now, what happens if you can't engage your diff lock like I have, or like I haven't been able to do because the whole thing is seized? When you pull the right hand axle housing out, and I'll just go and do it. That means that this collar here, it can actually come back on the throw-out fork and not line up. So I'll try and push the axle in there, and you'll probably see that I can't. Well, I might be lucky and get it, but most times you can't. So that's me pushing the axle there now. Now, you see what happens? It just goes out of whack. It wouldn't get that far out with the crown wheel carrier in it, but if you can get it lined up, that's it lined up there now. So what the story is once you slide that axle out on the right hand side, that can come out of place. Now, because that can move around a little bit here, and where are we? On the crown wheel carrier here. When you engage it, that pushes that collar into here, and the bearing housing here stops it from getting out of whack. So when you engage your diff lock on the right hand side, I'm having trouble holding on to this. When you engage it, that collar comes and pushes in here. It gets held in line pretty well, and your splines will already be lined up, because the splines in the collar will already be lined up with the splines in your side gear, because they're all on the same shaft. So there you go, a bit of dodgy film work here, but anyway, I just wanted to show you why you would tie your right hand diff lock down, tie your diff lock pedal down before removing the axle, and that will press it up into here, hold it up there. The spline will be lined up with this spline here for when you go to come back together, and you'll be all good. Well, as part of stripping our back housing, we have the pinion shaft here. Now, the pinion shaft takes drive from the coupler, and this coupler goes up to the back of your high-low or your planetary, and slides up over there like that. So that's how you get your drive to your pinion. So to strip the gearbox housing out, we need to get this out. I'd like to undo these bolts here, and you can see that there's not a chance you can get to them. And there's a lock nut here. This gear here, it drives down onto your PDO shaft. Now this shaft, or this gear, here's your PDO gear. So when your PDO fork, when your lever comes through the side here and works your PDO forward for engine speed or backwards to ground speed, when it goes back to ground speed, in neutral it would sit there and just turn, which is a bit hard for you to see, I can see on the monitor, but when it comes to ground speed, away you go, and it comes back. So this gear here is for driving the ground speed. So how do we get that undone? Okay, we leave the PDO gear there. There's a little lock tab that we have to undo back here. I'll just grab my hammer. Bit of trouble with light today. But anyway, we'll get through. We'll just give that a bit of a bump with me little screwdriver there. Now I could feel this moving on there just a little bit, so I'll just check that there's only one hooked in. Yep, only one. Now just with my cold chisel we'll see. Oh yes, we can bump that apart. I'll bump it out. Now if that was really tight and you couldn't do it just like I was doing there, I have a chunk of solder, and the chunk of solder I just put through between the gears there and gives the gears something to bite on, so it stops them from turning, and it also doesn't, oh well, it's also not too hard that it's going to damage anything. I've decided just to strip this housing out bare. We'll clean it up, and then when we start coming back together, when we have to look for all the little fine details, well, that's when we'll cover some of that. So here comes the bearing off your pinion. Your pinion bearing looks to be in good order, but you'll notice a very steep ramp on the bearing compared with other ones. So there is a circlip at the front here if you just want to replace this gear. Now our pinion's slopping around in there, back and forth, you can see him there. We can remove this PDO gear now, we don't need that to hang on to anything. And these fellas here should come undone, and that should allow us to draw the pinion back out. Now I'm not going to, because the bearings are good, I'm just going to set up the preload a little bit and put them back, which will mean that the pinion will be in its original position probably, but we will check for backlash and things like that. So I'll just go and grab the nut gun and we'll rattle this away. See how we go. I've got a stand over this side with a microphone boom, so we're all over the shop a little bit. The nut gun wants to hit on the microphone bracket. There'll be shims behind here that we have to keep. There we go. Okay, that's the pinion. The pinion's in really good order. Now, these have a pinion support bearing, and where the crown wheel pushes on here, it actually supports the end there. Look, that's in good order. Looks to be in good nick. Now, in here there's a cup and a cone, and we have to do this up this way. We have to do that up to a certain preload, and when we do the preload up, I'll try and run through that and we'll go from there, eh? Okay, now if I grab the camera back here, you can see I'm recording sound on my phone. We have empty housings. There's nothing in there. So our next move from here is take all this outside, give it a bath, and then we'll slowly start assembling.